Hey, welcome to this podcast. Welcome to GMASH Speaks. Welcome to Censuses. We are titling this one, The Mind, Our Most Powerful Tool. Now, you apply that to what we are currently experiencing in the globe, the pandemic COVID-19. So, the mind is our most powerful tool against COVID-19. We are in a new normal world. What we knew, what we used, what we did before COVID-19 is in the past. That is the old. Now we are in a new normal. And in this new normal, we need to unlearn what we have learned. So it's learn, unlearn, and relearn. Success in the post-COVID-19 world will be largely due to us disrupting and challenging the status quo. And that means having to refuel and reboot our minds. That is an essential part in us succeeding post-COVID-19. With all of our podcasts, we'll be empowering our audience. However, this particular podcast is part of the Empower Pill Toolbox Kit. And we know that by the time you go through, by the time you've listened to this podcast, it is our hope that you will have 3 more tools to work with, tools to change your reality. And by having those tools, you will have tools added onto the ones that you currently have, tools that can be used in changing the state and the condition of your mind. That is our objective. Now, we earlier mentioned that we have to learn, or we have learned, we have to unlearn and relearn. And that is particularly what we are doing in this series of podcasts. We are not hardwired to remain a certain way. Neither are we doomed by our genes. We believe in this group, in this tribe, that we can live beyond our genes. That is what we believe in this tribe. Let us set out to transform our so-called accepted genetic destinies by shifting habits, by shifting perceptions, and by changing ingrained unconscious programming. We need to live beyond the accepted norm of we are being run or we are being ruled by our genes. That is the old normal. We are in a new normal. Essentially, the programs stored in our minds can only be reprogrammed through a deliberate set of actions. And these are steps that we take on a daily basis. It includes having effective daily meditation. Now, when we are strongly present in mind, the tools, or otherwise put, the steps that we're going to show you today will help to reprogram our minds to the point where we will then be able to fulfill the very purpose of why we are on the face of the earth. Basically, why were we created? Every one of us went through 2 fundamental learning processes. And the first stage in that 2-pronged process is being in a state of theta, or theta, depends on how you want to pronounce that, theta, which is essentially a meditative state. It's a state of subconsciousness, and that is where we are below consciousness. That's what the word subconsciousness means, below consciousness. In that state, we observed and sponged off our environment. We were like in a hypnotic state before we turned 7 years of age. That's the first stage, okay? That's the subconscious stage where we are in a semi-hypnotic state. Then the second stage, which is a stage we reach after the age of 7, in that stage, it is the way we learn in that state after 7 years of age is primarily through practice, through repetition. And that is how we learn to drive. That is how we learn to memorize the multiplication table, amongst other things. Strength, extremely important post COVID-19. The mind is the general, the body is the soldier, and the body does what the mind instructs it to do. The body goes where the mind tells it to do, and the body instructs the mind to go and do whatever it wants it to do. So what we are essentially saying is that 95% of what we are in life are direct results of the program stored in our minds. And that was things done to us or things done in our lives before we turned 7 years old. So what happens after we are 7? What happens after we've built 95% of our subconsciousness is what I've referred to before, and what I'm going to repeat is what is called the repetition phase. It's the phase where we learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is the stage where we build our minds. So our minds become the general and our bodies remain the soldiers. Now, there is an important part of our lives which we are going to touch on now. It's extremely important, and that's the mind. Now, the mind is the garden, okay? And that garden is what we're going to have to address right now. So what is the garden of the mind? It is just like your flower garden, okay? Now, if you're planting a garden, you've got to first get rid of the weeds. You have to take the plants from the previous year or from the past year or years, and you have got to pull out the weeds. Now, all around the weeds are rocks, and these are rocks that sift in most cases to the top. Now, those are like our emotional blocks. They first have to be removed, and they have to be removed so that we can take out the weeds. Then the soil has to be tenderized and broken down. We then have to make room to plant the new garden. So basically, 95% of who we are by the time we are 35 years old, remember I first mentioned 7 years old is the first stage in learning. So 95% of who we are by the time we are 35 years old are either a garden of weeds or a garden of beautiful flowers. And being a garden is like a garden of memorized set of, or it's like having a memorized set of behaviors, of emotional reactions, of unconscious habits, of hardwired attitudes, of beliefs and perceptions. So basically, it's a garden that functions like a computer program. Before the computer can function effectively, it has to be programmed. And that is what happens to the garden of our minds. There are 3 patterns, 3 principles that we need to go through that will help us create our new normal. So how do we do this? How do we make these changes? How do we plant a new and a beautiful garden? There are 3 things that we need to do. We need to create a new and deliberate pattern, and these are the 3 things we will have to do on a daily basis in order to get our subconsciousness to unlearn, relearn, rewire, learn, and refire. And the 3 things we need to do are this. We need to first have and use concise choice of positive words. That is the first thing we need to do and have. Secondly, we need to have clear visualization. And by this, I mean we have a clear direction of where we are directing the choice of positive words. And lastly, we need a corresponding feeling. You cannot just say the words but have no visualization. You can't go from to 2 without having 1. And you definitely cannot have no feelings attached to your visualizations. So let us try and conceptualize this, and let's put this in play. And as I put this in play, I just need to give accolades and thank you to London Real Academy, and also thank you to Dandapani. This goes out to you. You guys empowered me with this tool. So for example, if I say I love apples, okay? Now, when I say the word I, now this is pattern 1. I mean, and in pattern 1, it's and that is where we have concise choice of positive words. So the words we are looking at now is or are I love apples, 3 words. So when I say the word I, my mind knows I'm talking about me. When I say the word love, my mind knows that I like it. It associates love to likeness. My mind knows that I enjoy it. It associates love to enjoyment. My mind knows that I adore it. It associates love to adoration. And that's what love means to me. However, when I say the word apples, then my mind gets confused because it's searching my entire hard drive. It is going through my entire 95% subconsciousness from the day I was born. It's going to check every occurrence of the word apple. Yes, it sees apples. Here is where this podcast gets really slowed down. It gets really riveting. Please hold on as we probe the mind. Hang on with me. So, I have told my mind 3 things. I love apples, right? That's what I've told my mind. And now it's searching through my whole reservoir of information regarding apples. And what does my mind see? The red apple, the green apple, it sees yellow apple, it sees half apple, it sees Honeycrisp apples, it sees Red Delicious apple, it sees Fuji apples, it sees Granny Smith apples, it sees the Washington apple. Or is it perhaps a totally different apple that it's being referred to? Could it be the Apple MacBook Pro? Could it be the MacBook Air? Could it be Apple Watch or the iWatch? Or is it something totally different? Is it the iPad? Is it the Apple TV? Or again, something different? So my mind is asking itself, what apple is he talking about? So the question the mind begs is, what apples or what apple is he talking about? And the mind is in a state of confusion. I have no idea, it says. So we can see from using concise choice of just positive words in itself is not enough. We need to add on to that pattern. And this is why we have visualization. We call it clear visualization, meaning leave nothing to chance. Be clear what you want. Deeply visualize it. So when I say I love apples, I then need to add the power of clear visualization to it. I need to visualize the exact apple that I want. So, is it a bright red apple? If it's a bright red apple, I need to be present in my mind and hold that clear imagery in my mind. And I need to hold it long enough and make a habit of that. then my mind goes, oh, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the red apple. So in that instance, the I love apples is actually he loves bright red apples. It is a particular type of an apple. It is a Washington or Honeycrisp apple, which has a little yellowish tint to it. Now you are clear of what apple that you are referring to. That is pattern 2, the power of clear visualization, which brings you to the point where you say, I love the Honeycrisp apples. We have to visualize the Honeycrisp apples at the point of applying pattern 2. Now, once we are done and we've confirmed our clear visualization, then comes the third pattern that we need to have. This is what we call the corresponding feeling. We need to add that to it. So what exactly is that? So feeling is emotion. Emotion in itself is energy. And I will buttress that with what the famous scientist Nikola Tesla said. And he put it out there so accurately. I love the way he put it. He rightly said, to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So every organ, every matter, every chain has molecules and atoms that are vibrating at a certain frequency, and this helps to bind them together, creating a certain matter. So what we believe is that if you fill your subconsciousness with infused patterns, if you fill your subconsciousness with infused thoughts and feelings, and these feelings are vibrating at a certain frequency, what happens is that they then create emotions. So what we feel are then vibrations. Every feeling has a vibration, which is why taking affirmative, decisive, and positive actions and deliberately deciding on opposite feelings when we feel unhappy, and it could be affirmative, decisive, and positive actions such as exercising or spending time in nature. By that, I mean going out to get some sunlight vitamins, some sunshine vitamins, even when we don't feel like it. And the reason we do that is because it helps us to feel better. So what we are doing by taking decisive and positive actions is we are changing our vibration by simply adding a different emotion, by simply doing a different thing, a different feeling to the current thoughts we hold in our minds is introduced, and that changes our vibration. It changes the energy we have on the inside. Now we have what we call emotions. Every emotion has a corresponding vibration. So this moment you may be sad, then the next moment you may be happy. So this moment you may be compassionate, then later you may be unkind. So this moment you may be angry, and another moment you may be loving. This moment you may be blissful, and then later you may be anxious. Now, what happens is that this motion of emotions goes on, and we know that emotions are states. That is, emotions are temporary forms, and they are comprised of energy that are in constant flux. So energy takes form, and emotions, by corresponding or by falling on that, takes form also. Anything that takes form by its very nature will transform and dissolve. anything that takes form by its very nature will transform and dissolve. Anger is a higher up negative emotional frequency, and anger vibrates at 150 kilohertz. I don't have it on the screen. Okay, sad emotions are produced with a higher pitch. They have less intensity but more vocal energy. So the vibrational frequency of anger, as I mentioned, is 150 kilohertz and falls 150 hertz, beg your pardon, and falls to contraction. Now, this frequency, this emotion, does the exact opposite to the frequencies that we are more interested in building in this tribe. We have a positive outlook. So we're going to focus more on the frequencies that we build us. Now, this might all sound mystical. However, trust me, as Nikola Tesla stated, to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. We need this new mindset in order to survive post-COVID-19. When we have a greater understanding, when this is achieved in the power of emotions, and when we look at what foxes or sheep we allow in our gardens, remember we talked about the garden of the mind, then our minds will largely determine the outcomes we experience in life. So at the state of joy, for instance, which joy being the frequency at which the brain, quite interesting, right? The brain releases hormones of pleasure and exuberates endorphins in and around the body. That is what joy does to you. In doing that, it reduces pain and boosts pleasure, resulting in a feeling of well-being. We are happy, we are in a pleasant garden when we operate in the frequency of joy. It is a frequency, it's vibration, it's energy. So as I showed on the previous screen, when we operate from about 430 hertz and above, we are now in the frequencies which the good book lists the fruit of the spirit. Some of you are well aware of the 9 fruits of the spirit. We're talking about love, joy, we're talking about peace, we're talking about patience, we're talking about kindness, we're talking about goodness, we're looking at faithfulness, gentleness, and finally we're looking at the 9th fruit of the spirit, self-control. These are the fruits of the spirit that we are focusing our minds on to build a beautiful garden. So we have the fruits of the spirit operating in a particular energy and vibration frequency. I established that fact on the previous screens. So as a good case in point, the vibrational frequency of joy, as mentioned earlier on, is a higher up positive emotion, and it runs on above 540 hertz, which in itself is actually above the love frequency. The love frequency operates at 528 hertz. And that particular frequency, 528 hertz, coincidentally is also known as the DNA repair frequency. And it's a very expansive frequency covering a wide area in terms of space and scope. So when we are constantly present at and on these frequencies, when we have these frequencies of emotions activated in us on a daily basis, when we live in these frequencies, now guess what we are unconsciously doing to our bodies? We are repairing our DNA structure. We are healing our bodies just by being present and feeling in true God love, just by living in the fruit of the spirit. We are actually healing our bodies, and this is done by us staying in that range of frequencies. It's done unconsciously. Well, if you are an atheist, sorry, I cannot help you with this reality. So what I'm saying basically is your thought, when it is present, when it is infused, it attracts things of a similar nature to it. So when I meditate and I go into my subconsciousness and I repeat an affirmation over and over and over, an affirmation which has a concise choice of positive words, an affirmation which has clear visualization, and when having done those two, I infuse the corresponding feeling into it, then I begin to walk in that exact feeling. That is a fact. The question is, what does it feel like? What is that feeling? So what happens is this: it starts to vibrate in my subconsciousness with the path of that frequency, of that particular energy. And what happens then is it attracts anything of a similar vibration. It attracts energy or similar frequencies towards it. It attracts love. It attracts health. It attracts wealth, as long as we put the feeling into it consciously. And what that happens, it then overrides the old programs that have been fed into our 95% subconsciousness. Those are the programs fed into us when we were kids and before we turned 7. So now, in direct conflict to the fruit of the Spirit, which you're looking at here, we have anger, we have depression, we have unforgiveness, we have bitterness, and we have anxiety. And what we identify with these 5 particular direct conflicted states of being or emotions, we call them the big 5 emotions. Now, these 5 emotions attract every kind of evil you can think of. They attract cancer. They trigger off the cortisol hormones, which in excess is bad, in moderation is essential for the body. But what it actually does is that they break down the bonds holding our cells together. So we say to the man who does not apply these 3 principles daily, or these 3 patterns daily, that they are then victims to their genes. And in this case, remember we said the gene is like the gun. So they are victims to their genes. They are victims to the gun. And they're also victims to the environment they find themselves in. The environments could be the environment in their minds, the environment in their spirit. And what then happens that this environment becomes the trigger. So essentially, our environment controls how we think and how we feel. And all this is done unconsciously. Or as we put it, it's done subconsciously, which is below consciousness. This is when you are categorized or you see yourself as a victim. This is the 95% of what our mind is made up of, subconscious build-up from when we were born. Now, energy, and I'm trying to bring this to a close. I want to get this done before 35 minutes. So in closing on this particular series on empowering our minds, energy doesn't know how to discriminate between what's good for you and what's not good for you. It's just energy. So anything of a similar frequency gets drawn to you. So when we know how the subconscious works, and we then know how to reprogram or to program it using meditation and affirmations by applying clear, concise choice of positive words with clear visualization and a corresponding feeling, what I will say is this: I recognize feeling arguably being the most important component of the 3. It's the most important if I was to choose between the three, because the feeling we put in, the feeling we infuse is the actual energy that attracts. I'll give a case in point. Just spend 5 minutes with Michael Jordan. You can see him on the screen here. He will let you know that he rehearsed thousands of times during practice where there was nobody. He rehearsed so many moves, so many situations in practice. And he did that so that when he found himself in a match situation, in the same practice situation that he had rehearsed over and over 1,000 times, his subconsciousness took over. And what happened? He won the duel. It is in the feeling that we put into what we do, or what we believe, or what we say. So, with feeling arguably being the most important component of the three, then you can draw into your life. You can bring anything you desire. You can bring whatever you want into your life. That is a fact. Now, in this current pandemic, I call it the pandemic generation. In this generation that we are living in, we are going to take and apply these empower pills on a daily basis for us to enjoy the full benefit. Interesting person here, Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein is quite an important person, and I established previously in the previous podcast that I've aired on radiation. Please, guys, do check this podcast. I mentioned critically that everything is made up of energy, and energy vibrates at a certain frequency. I've also reiterated that fact here. In this current pandemic generation that we are living in, for us to develop our immunity, we need to operate with and in the right frequencies. We need to operate in and in the right vibrations. We need to operate with and in the right energies. This is pattern 3 concluded. And pattern 3 is we need to put in a definite feeling. We put energy to the concise choice of positive words. We put in a corresponding feeling, which is of course we putting in a deliberate emotion to those clear visualizations. I hope I'm making sense. Now, at this point in time, we have come to the completion of one of the Empower pills, which is part of the Synthesis Toolbox Kit. We are going to develop and grow our inner strength and focus more on the outcomes that we want. This is well documented by a great icon, Oprah Winfrey. She put this quite well. Oprah Winfrey happens to be a great success story, and she, in her lifetime, and she still does on a daily basis, she applies these 3 patterns that we are currently empowering ourselves with. So we focus on what we want. When we teach ourselves how to do that in a meditative process, it then turns out that when we are in what we call a present state of mind, that is a deliberate state of being in a deep daily meditative state, what then happens in that state is that we are less likely to emotionally react to the external. We are less likely to be so rigid, and we are less likely to act out the thoughts that we were thinking when we are in that deep meditative state. We are now more aware of what we have infused in our new subconsciousness, and we will find out that it's going to be more difficult to slip back into old habits. Now, that is where the process of change has started and now becoming effective. It's a gradual stage, guys. Now, in a rather sanguine state, and bear in mind, I'm being extremely positive and hoping for good outcomes, what I'm going to share now. However, we need to prepare ourselves for the big plan to get us all with compromised immunities. There is a big plan. You heard it here. There is a new disease called disease X. Not given a name yet, and it's not COVID-19. We call this disease the radiation virus. It is in play, guys. It's in play already. However, it is not yet to the scale in which it will be from next year, being 2021, and fully by 2022. We have information that we're going to share through this particular CONCISE platform. Information that by 2025, this new normal virus, the radiation virus, will be classified by the WHO as an endemic, meaning it's going to be here to stay forever. And there is a plan for the world to be forced to take vaccines. It is coming, guys. It is in the mail, and you heard it here. We invite you into our tribe. I'm going to give a brief bio on why I am doing this. So please hang on with me as I close on this podcast. So I am having the right to speak because I speak from experience. I have been a victim of what I term as the radiation virus. I'm going to expand more on this later on. I therefore speak as a survivor. Okay, you can take your time to go through my bio. We have covered this empowered pill. With that being said, we conclude on the first of many podcasts on the daily to be used empower pill, guys. This is a pill we need to use on a daily basis. I close this podcast with this profound statement. Do what you have to do what you want to do. Optimal health is important to get us to the level of wealth. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. We are building a strong, solid foundation, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I have decided to do this. So we at CONCISE, we are intent on building a solid foundation for optimal relationship with health and wealth. Just like the best teacher our world has ever seen, that humble carpenter from Galilee. He built. It does take a while to build, most especially where you are building the right and solid foundation. We are working on the dream. Join us as we work on this dream. We are building a huge library. We are building a community that will today and in the near future have sufficient material and resources to work with, resources to share, resources to make use of on a daily basis. We are patiently building, guys. This is a 5-year program that we have in motion. It has energy. We have a concise choice of positive words. We have a clear visualization, and we do have corresponding feelings. It takes hours, sometimes days, to prepare just one podcast. We are working on this dream. We want to ask you one thing. Please do subscribe to our channel. Click on the notification button. Click on the subscription button so that you'll be notified when these podcasts are made available. Please click on that red button, that red subscribe button below. Thank you for your time. Most importantly, we are here to start the fire. Till we hook up again, please keep safe. Welcome to the new normal. Next up, I need to mention this in closing. We will, on the 10th of June, that's 10th of June 2020, we're going to broadcast a very, very brief podcast on why we can't breathe. You cannot miss that podcast. God bless you guys. Stay safe. I love you all. We'll talk soon. Enjoy your day.